Brilliant. Well, look, it's 11:31. Thanks for those who've joined. I'm sure more will join as we go on. It's always the way. But welcome to this one-to-one series, which is insights from leading real estate professionals. We've got a joyous morning this morning with Charlotte Atkins and Casey Baldwin from Facebook. I'll let them introduce themselves in a little bit. But welcome to everyone who has joined. My name is Sam Pickering. I'm past president of the CoreNet UK chapter, and I'm also a director at Incendium. I just want to give you a quick insight into some of the really exciting UK chapter events that are happening in the next couple of months and into 2022. I can't believe it is about to be 2022. So the 13th of October is a Young Leaders Joint CoreNet and BCO charity event. You'll probably have seen lots of flyers coming out about that event. Please don't ignore them, and please do attend if you're of that age group. The 11th of November is the wrap-up session, which is all around hybrid experiences. More details will follow on that, but this is a really, really great event that sort of, as per the title, wraps up the year for the UK chapter and is being run by James Pack. So more information will come out on that. But again, it's going to be an in-person event. So if nothing else, it'll just be nice to see people, I would suggest. And then as only the UK chapter could do, on the 25th of November, we've got the Christmas party. For me, I'm not sure November is Christmas, but we'll stick with that. But it is the 25th of November. It is in the London Shuffle Club, which if anybody went, what is now 2 years ago, pretty much, it was really good fun and well worth attending. So again, invites will be sent out soon, so look out for those. And then as we go into 2022, the 12th of January, again, is the sort of permanent fixture within the diary, but that's predictions and resolutions. And that will be when Vernon Blunt takes over as the president. So that's one for your diaries for 2022. So looking forward to all of those. I have to give a huge thank you to all of our brilliant sponsors who've been so loyal to us over 2021 and also 2020. Without these, we couldn't function as a chapter. We rely heavily on their very kind pounds and also their support in terms of space, speakers, and so on and so forth. So IWG, thank you very much. Savills, the Office Group or TOG, and also TP Bennett. So thank you very much to all of those. What I would say, a minor plug to the joys of sponsorship. If anybody would like to sponsor the UK chapter, please get hold of me because that would be a treat. So thank you to everyone. So here we are today to talk all about and get a good insight into Facebook. I'm afraid it's been a busy week for the company, I would suggest, but I won't go into any of that. But rather than me, you had a slide introducing sort of Charlotte and Casey, but I would do a disservice to introduce them both. So rather than me trying to do that, why don't you, Charlotte, kick off and give us a quick introduction of who you are and where you come from?
Excellent. So you can all hear me now because I have successfully unmuted myself. Yes, we're going with a yes. Woohoo! So I'm a Kiwi. I've been in the UK for 22 years and have worked in the real estate industry for the last 18. So I have a politics and film degree. I'm a trained chef. I've worked as a sommelier. So the real estate career was sort of a bit left field and somewhat accidental. I'm also a pioneer in flexi working, as Sam and I have discussed. I have lived in deepest, darkest Somerset for the last 5 years.
Very good. I love the way so many people seem to sort of fall into corporate real estate as a sort of a mistake. Never a mistake, I would point out, but not sort of we're going in that direction. I think that might have changed, thankfully. And Casey, over to you.
Thanks, Sam. Not as impressive as Charlotte, but similar sort of story. UK for about 11 years from the accent. I'm Australian, Aussie, from Perth on the West Coast where all the great beaches are. I've been obviously in real estate for at least the last 15 years or so. Similar, I started in hospitality and made my way into facilities, which I have been in since and massively enjoying. Like most Aussies, I am a mad sports fan, enjoy a drink or two, love to travel, and I'm a bit of a netball fan, to say the least, which Sam knows and has heard about a few times. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Very good. So definitely 2 wine drinkers, which isn't a huge surprise, and 2 Antipodeans. So who would have thought in the UK chapter? Very diverse as always. So brilliant. Well, thanks for that introduction. And Charlotte, obviously you've had a long career, it's clear, within corporate real estate. Why don't you, can you just talk us through sort of your journey? I guess you've sort of talked through that, but also you've been at Facebook for a long time now. Just talk through what you've seen in the past 6 or so years as you've sort of progressed within the organization.
Cool. So first, so I've done a variety of roles in different real estate teams, primarily focused on service and operations. Initially, I spent 10 years in the financial services sector. Took a break to work for a startup. I was the CEO of a small startup in the market research industry for a while, and then went back into real estate at Facebook about 6 years ago. So currently, I'm the director of a programs group and a transportations group. So the programs group, what we do is we really help run and implement initiatives that change how we deliver real estate solutions globally. And then the transportation group is much more about connecting people with the office, helping support their commutes. So trying to find ways to commute that works for different people in different environments.
So big variety, Charlotte, big variety. And Casey, what's your sort of potted history and how you found yourself up at Facebook?
Slightly different. As I mentioned, I started in hospitality, and that was in Sydney. I moved into similar financial sector and outsourced with CBRE, which I'm sure everyone on this call is familiar with. I've done about 10 years at CBRE in a number of major roles on client and global accounts. So a lot of those were around transitioning new contracts, operationally setting up the structure of accounts, and then ultimately working with global clients on their strategy and making sure that sort of implements across the account and the business. And then obviously working internally with CBRE in terms of that account management layer and just giving back sort of best practice and things like that. So I was then offered and met with Charlotte for a brief coffee to talk about Facebook, which was an incredible opportunity that I absolutely was ready to take on. Definitely something I couldn't turn down and was super exciting. So still have a lot of time for CBRE, 10 years of history there, but it's been an incredible journey to date. So again, and my role is head of facilities and operations. So I'm much more on the tactical ground of delivering our real estate strategy and working with our clients to provide the best possible employee experience we have at Facebook in our offices.
And what's your kind of what's the most enjoyable part of the role you have today?
I think it's the autonomy to make my own decisions. It was something that was super exciting to come to a business that is a very flat structure. So whether you're global, regional, on the ground, we all sit together to get the job done. So that was something that I had never seen in an organization before. I'm used to financial sector that go through about 10 layers to get anything approved. So the ability to own something and be accountable for it. And then just, be able to make really fast decisions to get the right outcomes and being given that sort of freedom within our team is something I think is quite unique to the real estate team at Facebook and something I'm super proud to be a part of.
Yeah, brilliant. And Charlotte, I can't move on without asking you the same question, actually.
I like the people. I think that's my, I really enjoy everyone I work with. I think we have fun. We move fast. We solve difficult problems. To Casey's point, we solve difficult problems quickly. I think we are nimble, agile. And all of that makes it a very engaging place to work. So yeah, I really enjoy it. And everyone's smart and nice and kind as well. And that's wonderful.
Yeah, joy. So, obviously moving forward fast and everything else is exactly what's happened within Facebook for the last decade plus. So I guess, Charlotte, from your perspective at a kind of global real estate and facilities side, and obviously, Casey, I'll move on and ask you the same question about facilities in a minute, but just give the audience a kind of a bit of an intro in terms of that sort of roller coaster ride you've been on for that period.
Yeah, so I joined in 2015 and globally we had about 14,000 people. Now we're coming up on 85,000. So that's a lot of people that we've hired. We have hired 22,000 people since we shut our offices in March 2020. So as we've expanded, everything has got more complicated. So we have a lot of people using our spaces in different ways now from what they did 5-10 years ago. We have different businesses offering different services. We have labs. We have F2, the finance organization. We have different sales teams wanting to engage with clients in different ways. So from having a relatively generic offering 5 years ago, we now have a complicated and diverse offering. So we have developed and reacted to that. So our focus has always remained aligned to the company values. We move fast, we ship love, we show care, but that entrepreneurial spirit has been key, and that's enabled us to deliver what we have and manage that change in such a short time space.
That's amazing growth. It's quite scary actually to look back. I mean, 22,000 people since March. Amazing. So Casey, obviously as part of that, you're obviously, I guess, at the coalface within operations. How for goodness sake have you kept up with that?
It is definitely a roller coaster ride, but a good problem to have. So just to give some perspective on Europe, 5 years ago, we're at 6,000 plus. End of this year, we're looking at doubling that at around 15,000. So it is extreme growth for us within Europe. I think the piece that we play, or the role we play in that, is facilities are critical. Everything from transactions to projects to the facilities team to our finance partners. We all need to pull together to make sure that we can deliver the outcomes and also provide the space for our teams to grow into and ultimately be productive in as well. So things like, and some of the pillars that make that, I guess, that we've built and developed the team and able to scale and take this growth and make it happen, is having experts and great talent within our teams to do that. Entrepreneurial spirit, to Charlotte's point, thinking outside the box and being creative with solutioning and not just sort of taking a problem and only having one lens on that. So you definitely have to be creative within your real estate world. And I think the other core pillar for us is client engagement. It's on the forefront of everything we do in facilities, whether you're engaging with an employee that works through the front door to a head of office to a VP within one of the businesses, but staying engaged, open communication, anticipating their needs. But more importantly is being able to pivot and move fast as well, because there's one thing about Facebook, it never stands still. And being able to be fluid and roll with that movement as you go down the rapids of craziness in Facebook, I think is, huge to our success and being able to grow with the business and be an enabler there to expand our footprint across the globe.
Yeah, amazing. I'm gonna pause just for one moment because I should have said this right at the outset, because I've just clicked on being technology illiterate, which is embarrassing within this crowd of us three. But I clicked on the chats and everyone said morning. So morning to Marcello, Louise, Vernon and Kevin. Good to have you on board. But please do use that chat function if you've got any questions. I will incorporate these into this session whenever they come through, if they're relevant. Any question can be put on the table, and I would encourage you to take this opportunity to ask questions of both Charlotte and Casey, because we've obviously shaped this session around what we think you want to hear, but if you've got specific asks, then please do ask. Sorry about that. I just felt I had to sort of step in there. So obviously you've talked about the growth, which is, as I've said earlier, is just unbelievable in terms of the operations and also the headcount. But that also, I can imagine, has really seen the rise in the importance of facilities. Charlotte sort of mentioned it when she was talking as well. But everyone, I'm sure within the audience, has really sort of heard about the amazing experience when you walk into a Facebook office. I have to say, I have been lucky enough to spend a bit of time in a Facebook office, which is always a treat. But Casey, why don't you just give the audience a bit of an insight into the importance of what real estate and facilities play within that space?
Yeah, absolutely. So touching on culture slightly, I guess the space and the workplace you're in is a reflection of your culture and a reflection of how you operate as a business. So to be a part of being able to create that workspace is an incredible privilege that we have in the real estate team at Facebook. Walking through a Facebook doors for the first time I don't think you ever forget it. And also when you go to new offices as well, it's always just a nice like, oh, okay, great. We know where we are. It's really familiar. It's exciting. So we play every bit of aspect to creating that space, but also to creating an experience, which is probably more, towards where real estate is going. It's less about the walls and the aircon and the lease, but more around how you feel when you walk into a space and making it sort of comfort zone to do what you do day to day, because you spend most of your time at work, probably 50-50 compared to home. So facilities takes it seriously and is really important for us to create the experience from the moment you walk through the doors, to which you have like reception. We have our smiley security partners and our brand ambassadors in some of the places, into the space itself, which is completely open, so people can move through that space freely. There's no sort of restrictions as such. It's open environment. We do have a few baristas in place. We have some Oculus rooms to try out our IT or our platform products. We also have an arts rooms in some locations. We also have artists in our spaces. So we bring the outside artists into our community and within our spaces to show off their incredible talents as well. And then you go up through the spaces, you've got the workspace areas, which, traditionally, and we'll touch on it later, is a desk allocation type space. You own that little bit of real estate yourself and make it yours. And teams in neighborhoods will also do the same. But we also have the fun amenity spaces as well. And for those that have been in, they include amazing culinary cafe spaces with lots of amenities with ice cream trucks or donut bars, which are always a little creative for our teams, through to games rooms, amazing event spaces with our AV production teams, studio spaces, partner spaces, the list goes on. So it's an incredible environment. All of that is owned and managed and run by us or in partnership with our incredible teams that sit either side in facilities and culinary and EE, our IT team. So it is something that we're on the face of, that we need to make sure is a great experience, those amenities are delivered well, and that we actually take feedback to continue to evolve that experience as such. So we're on the front of it in a nutshell. Super proud of it, and we have a great team in place to make sure that that's consistent. One of the ethoses of Facebook is walking into any office feels familiar, no matter where it is, because it really encompasses that same ability to make you feel like you're at home, which is something that we get to help create and manage.
Amazing. God, it has been a long time. That just seems great. Favorite, what is your favorite amenity? I'm guessing ice cream, or is it a donut?
I'm going to go with the donut bar just because they get super creative with the flavors. They just throw a few things out there. Now, it's been over 2 years since I've had one, so I'm looking forward to getting back to the donut bar in Rathbone.
Yeah, very good. Well, I'm sure everyone's very jealous sitting on as part of this audience of that. But amazing. And obviously, it's clear that this space really sort of engenders the culture and assists in shaping the culture, I would imagine, as you go forward. Not just the donut bar, but every aspect that you kind of talk through. So, Charlotte, why don't you speak a little bit about that and how your facilities kind of shape the culture overall of the organisation?
Yeah, I was going to say it shapes, but it also reflects. So I think a lot of our architectural solutions actually were designed to physically represent the culture that we're trying to achieve. So we have a culture of being open and connected. So we have no ceilings. We have air ducts, so the whole void is shown. We have staircases, often designed by Frank Gehe, who's an architect we work a lot with, and has absolutely beautiful stuff. And I love the staircases. As an aside, there's a workplace group that's called Staircases at Facebook, where people just post nice pictures of staircases because they're lovely. But the staircases are designed to enable us to flow freely and easily through the space. It's about being open and connected. So that whole ethos of very much tying our architecture and our facility service with the core values of the business has been key from the get-go at Facebook. And you see that in the services we provide, the focus that we give to front-facing engagement, merging the culture of a organization with the culture locally, and the effort that's put into finding people on our side that manage to do those both things. So our facilities team is absolutely key to that.
Yeah, brilliant. I guess, Vernon, thank you for your question. I'm hoping you've kicked off a number of questions flying in, because there are now 2, which is always a joy. And the question is, how do you balance it feels like Facebook experience with their local cultural differences? Charlotte, why do you want to?
So I'll go first. Casey, you can jump in. But it's firstly, the thing that feels the same is often the architecture. So we use similar materials, we use similar design ethos throughout all of our buildings globally. Where you overlay that then with the local feel is often through art. So we work locally with artists in every location. So if you walk into a Facebook building, we don't put the art on it's not on paintings, it's on the walls. It's physically part of what we do. So that is the way we take the physical representation of a locality and a culture and effectively paint it on our not our glorious architectural solution. And that is physically how we merge the two together. I think then we do it by the people we hire. We hire people who are local, where we go. We have presence and work, and we'll talk a bit about it later, work to have a team that's got a geospread to it to enable presence in different locations who know and understand the local culture, but also understand Facebook. And that's why hiring for us is absolutely so key.
Yeah. And Casey, your perspective on that. And then there's another question from
see them flying in now.
Yeah, so I apologize for that one. But tell me, can you answer that? How do you manage capacity on your sites as well as that cultural nuances?
Yeah, I'll start with the cultural piece. I think the only one thing to layer onto Charlotte's is the hacks, the space hacks. Yeah. So we actually let our teams come together and brainstorm what reflects their culture locally. There's a really good one actually that I was a part of when I first joined Facebook in our Shaftesbury office. And on each floor, there's a different sort of reflection of London. So there's a pub scene, there's a Notting Hill scene, and there's a King's Cross scene or something like that. Yeah. So and these are like corners of the office or spaces there that show and reflect the local culture. Likewise, we've just opened our Madrid office, and they've done a whole wall and spread on similar artwork and also design. So space hacks for us is definitely something where employees get to have a little bit of a voice. Sam, I think the second question was the capacity.
The capacity, yeah, how you manage capacity on your site.
Yeah, so at the moment, capacity generally in Facebook is a 1-to-1 ratio. So every person's allocated desk. In terms of return to office, we have different layers and different frameworks in place globally that at different stages, depending on our health data, we then look at the capacity applicable to those controls and then open up at that capacity itself. In terms of controls, I think like any businesses that are running right now, it's either done through tools, logging in, working with teams to know who's coming in and who's not, and obviously maintaining a really safe workplace. So from a BAU perspective or business as usual, capacity is a 1-to-1 ratio for us in Facebook. You have your own desk, you position there. From an RTO perspective, like most businesses, I think we're just, we've got a framework in there that's balanced out against local controls, government guidance, and health data, really, to make sure that we're super safe.
Yeah, no, cool. And Christina and Catherine, I'm not going to ignore you in terms of your questions around the policies about return to the office and COVID changing strategy plans, because I think we'll touch on some of that. But just for Casey and Charlotte, you've seen those questions. So if we can wrap them in at some point, that'd be brilliant. So, we've talked about the growth. We've talked about the importance of facilities in terms of, I was about to say facilitating the culture, but you know what I mean. But it's kind of it's a partnership team and role, isn't it, really, between the two? And I guess as everything's grown, Charlotte, can you just talk about your sort of organization and how that's developed over time as well?
Yeah, so I think we're actually fairly standard in our structure. We have our regionally transaction projects and operations functions. that support each region globally. We look at planning programs and transportation globally because it enables us to drive consistency, equality, scalability. Whereas I think the other parts of the life cycle need much more regional nuance. So we have a matrix structure. What we are trying to do, and this has become really important as we scale, is like create SMEs in different pockets so that we can share and hold information about our clients, our customers, our services in a shared mind. I think it's growing too big for one person to know everything about everything. So creating that sort of matrix shared mind approach has been very, very key as we've evolved the business going forward. I think the other thing that is key is, like most we are state and facilities organization, as the business is growing, we've got some headcount, but it's definitely not proportional. And therefore we need to outsource, use our vendors, be really clever commercially in terms of how we engage, how we partner, and really partnering relationships with organizations that can help us achieve what we need to.
No, very good. And I guess if we, Casey, from your perspective within Europe, just bringing it back, so that obviously it's relevant to many people on this call from a global perspective, but I guess from your experience of what are the specifics within Europe in terms of that growth within the team?
Yeah, absolutely. I think to Charlotte's point, there's a level within my own team specifically. So these are, my Facebook direct team. And like most organizations, those teams are generally smaller with an outsourced partner. So I'll touch on that in a moment. But my team's spread across Europe. So I have 4 regional leads that are spread across the portfolio. Those regional leads are located, Ireland, UK, Hamburg, Tel Aviv, etc. And that's really a reflection of where the businesses are as well, and aligning to our key stakeholders that sit across the region. So there's a real strong partnership between having local facilities, real estate team representation in those regions and working really closely with our clients. It enables us to understand the culture a lot better, and there are some tricky cultures across Europe, let's be honest. But it also allows us to build one-to-one relationships with some of those clients and then expand those relationships out, as some of our clients do have multi-regional ownership as well. So there's an element there is, as we've expanded, we've developed that team and built structure under them to support that and have really strong succession planning to enable the partnering with our clients and really that, as I said previously, that client engagement piece. Below that, we have an incredible partner. I think it's open knowledge, we partner with JLL on our Europe account, and bringing the partner along on our journey is critical to everything we do. Similar to what I said before, we're the face of facilities, we're the face of the workplace, and having JLL understand that ethos, understand our strategy, our objectives, and be able to demonstrate that in everything they do as a reflection of our one facilities team is something we've strived and really pushed for. And I think that comes down to building your team, onboarding them in the right way, managing expectations, and making sure that we're all striving for that same goal at the end of it. And when it comes to employee experience, it's not something I think you can instantly learn, especially when we want to do it a particular way in Facebook. So as we look at building our teams, and to Charlotte's point, we're looking more at skill sets as opposed to maybe a traditional facilities degree, but maybe having a bit more perspective on how do we just provide an amazing experience with the subject matter expert skill set behind that as well. So, in my team in particular, and when I did come in, I've got a lot of leaders that sit there and have that, really great experience about providing a good service, but also technically underneath making sure we're ticking boxes. A lot of my team when I joined were actually women, which I'm super proud of. And maybe it's a little cheeky for me to say, and it's my opinion only, is I think, a woman's touch or a way of looking at customer service, while that might be a bit controversial to say, is also something I think I have had as a strength within my team in terms of that proportion of influence. I definitely have a 50-50 team now, so I've got a great team on board who will do that. But I think there's some value there on especially in facilities management. I've been in it for 15 years and I'm definitely still a minority. But I bring a different perspective with a hospitality background and maybe just a little bit more around just being a woman. It's just looking at it slightly differently. So I'll leave you with that thought, Sam.
Yeah, thanks. That makes it really difficult for me being a man and everything else. So thank you for that. And I guess, Charlotte, in terms of your team as well, it's probably a relatively sort of similar demographic, really. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, we're a strong female-led real estate organization. I mean, we have strong female leads throughout both here and actually with our Bay Area team as well.
Yeah, amazing. And it's obviously an honor for me to be in a minority on a corporate real estate call. So that is a joy for me. So, you know, diversity is, and it's obviously a good point to then lead on to the whole diversity and inclusion agenda within Facebook. And I guess as I would love to say, because the whole context behind this one-to-one series was all around that growth mindset. Clearly, for Facebook, that has always been the mindset. But when you look at diversity and inclusion, which is clearly such an important part of society as a whole, but Facebook as well, do you want to talk a little bit further into that and how D&I has played such an important role?
Yeah, so we generally look at D&I through three lenses. Firstly, there's the traditional lens with your HR, you know, find the best talent, grow the best talent, keep the best talent. And that's core to how we approach that side, you know, how we work with our full-time employee population, you know, making sure that there is opportunity for everyone, making sure we understand privilege, making sure that there is that it is something that we focus on as part of our recruitment as well. So we have a very robust approach from that perspective. I think we also look at it through the lens of procurement and our supply chain. And I think there's diversity and supplier diversity programs in place that we support, both formally, especially in the US, where they have obviously a much more structured supplier diversity program. But we work with our vendors globally to look for opportunities, even if they're not, you know, formal supplier diversity points, for want of a better word. We also work, and this is part of our whole ethos, I think. We partner with our vendors to make sure that they look at things through the same lens that we do. So actually, if you talk about where we can add significant impact, it's through our vendors and through our spend. And so that's where we focus quite a lot of our energy. So Casey's done some work with JLL. Casey, do you want to talk about some of the stuff you've done with JLL? Have I put you on the spot?
No, that's perfect. I was just getting myself off mute before I started talking and not hearing anything. I mean, this is a really exciting topic for us as a partner group, and we're looking and tackling this not just as JLL and Facebook, but just as a collective. How does this sort of improve anything within the real estate world when it comes to diversity and inclusion? So a few of the things that we've done as a team on the account and more broadly is looked at to your point, Charlotte, our sourcing and procurement, and working to make sure that who we're partnering with and sourcing with share the same values and goals that we do around D&I, and also ask them to sort of contribute above and beyond just the service scope, but also contribute to what we want to do as a strategy, so that strategy goes from top through every layer of the account. Because if we look at it, we're subcontracting as 2/3 of our entire team. So having a touch point from the cleaning subcontractors through to the JLL, through to the Facebook, all driving the same agenda, that's where you drive that impact as well. So the teams have done really hard work around making sure that that's there. They're also looking at working with those vendors where maybe they're not so strong on D&I, but actually helping them kind of strengthen that agenda within their own world. So that's their sort of give back as JLL sourcing, and a really good sort of initiative on our side. The other piece is we've looked at, similar to the HR agenda, we've looked at job descriptions and the way we actually interview, and the teams and the areas we go out in terms of resourcing for this account, and how we kind of bring different people in with different perspectives, different experience. It's not the traditional facilities manager has to know governance, but maybe it might be hospitality, or they might be coming from the airline industry, but looking at the skill set and the output, not necessarily a tick box criteria of a CV with a degree at a certain amount of experience. So broadening our perspectives to make sure that we can make it as inclusive as possible and give opportunities across some of those areas and teams and people that may not have had it before. The last piece is we do some incredible work on the community outreach. And this is something where we work with organizations to bring people into our spaces with JLL to do work experience, either one, and we've had some great examples of it, to work for JLL long term because they did such a great job that JLL ends up employing them. Or secondly, that they've got enough skill set, a really good recommendation, and it's a very good stepping stone for them to step back into other opportunities within the workforce. So that's, a small way of giving back, but also upskilling. But also for us, it's another access to some really great talent. And that's been proven by the fact, we've kept these guys on and they're still working in our teams and thriving. So it's something we're super passionate about. But JLL and Facebook working together make that super successful. So yeah, there's a few examples for you, Sam.
No, very good. And you can see that's a great journey you're on. And I think everyone's on different stages of that journey, but it's a really, really great sort of insight on that. And so if we kind of just look at the kind of the future evolution of work, clearly everyone on this call has been through a similar journey, both personally and probably relatively similar, different contexts, different sectors maybe. But Charlotte, can you also, just wrapping in those two questions, Christina and Catherine, I told you I'll come back to you both, but can you just wrap in those particular questions around the policies around return to work and how COVID might have changed strategies in any way in terms of that evolution over the last 18 months?
Excellent. So obviously, given my role, I have been somewhat in the thick of RTO for a good 18 months. So that has been a ride. And we're now starting to take that journey forward into the evolution of work. So if I think about 18 months ago, we were actually, compared to a lot of organizations, in a really good position. We have robust workplace technology that enabled us to work virtually very easily. So we have Workplace. Within a couple of weeks of arriving at home, everyone in the organization got a portal, which is a video conferencing device. So working virtually became more seamless than I've seen it in other organizations. Collaboration has always been absolutely key to everything we do. So the fact that we have good collaboration tools made the whole thing relatively seamless. Also, we're all quite used to working through VC, even in the office, because we all manage global disparate teams. So I think from a facilities perspective, the working from home, the RTO has been less about the struggles we've had working, though I think, and Casey we'll talk on a bit later, some of the challenges we've potentially had with the mental health and focusing on care and shipping love has been absolutely key to how we're focused on, has been a big part of our RTO response. But then as we think about the things we had to think about then were culture. And so what we started to think about as a facilities organization was, given that we were virtual, how can we provide the things that people liked about being in the office? And a lot of that were like access to fun things like yoga classes, to culinary workshops, to gym sessions, to a whole lot of stuff that enabled people to really feel connected, even though they weren't able to come and be in the office, because I think that's what people were missing. So, that maintaining culture is key. As we think about then returning to the office, we're starting to think about how we balance people's need, people's cultural desire to come back with the health and safety agenda, and then how that sort of bleeds into how people are going to work in the future. So I think we don't see these as separate elements, but more a progression from, hey, we've been at home, hey, we're going to let people back, and we're going to look at doing that in a way that's culturally appropriate, and then, hey, we're going to move to a more remote working, flex working culture, because actually it's been successful. People want it. We want to recruit and retain the best talent, but culture is still fundamental and key to that. So we need to, therefore, a lot of our thinking about the future and the evolution of work is how we support people at home, how we integrate them culturally into our environment, how we change potentially our office solutions to effectively allow people to get their cultural fits more quickly in an office, and how we enable people to come in and touch down in spaces where they can get that buzz quicker. So there's a progression based on how we see the facilities and then the cultural needs evolve over the next 18 months to 5 years, I guess.
No, brilliant. Christina, if you could tell me yes or no, whether that's answer your question. And I guess, Catherine, for your question, and James, I'm not forgetting your question. I promise we will get to sustainability, clearly very dear to my heart, so I wouldn't let that escape. But I guess, Casey, from your perspective, as you look 18 months ago in terms of make the desk your home type, that feels quite outdated as a kind of policy, or not even a policy, but as a premise. I guess it feeds into Catherine's question, was really how has COVID changed your strategy or plans for the future in any way?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been on the journey, as many of you have been, in a leadership role around how to sort of react initially, I think, in that 18 months. I think if we look back and see where we are today, absolutely COVID's influenced every policy, I think, of every business, just to take a different angle and a different perspective, because we're in this unknown territory for a long time. But I think for return to office, encouraging people to come back in or encouraging people to connect and be collaborative, I think, has been the main goal. Getting them into office space for us is still a very voluntary decision globally around making sure that that's something people feel comfortable with, that we're providing a super safe experience, and that teams can start to merge the virtual and the practical physical spaces together, and how do we enable that? So I think blanket policies and things like that, yeah, we've evolved as the pandemic's gone through. I think as a business, I think that's, every organization, to be honest. Locally, how do we look at it in terms of sort of, I think we're touching back to Charlotte's point. It's all based on culture, being sensitive to those local areas, being sensitive to the feedback, but also the premise of everything is super safe workplace. That's, I think, a global standard for everyone individually outside of Facebook. Our communities are still in huge pandemic global situations that we can't change, but we can contribute by making sure that we're doing things as safely as possible. In terms of the future, which is a bit I'm super excited about, and I can carry on for hours, but I'll keep it short in a few minutes, is to Charlotte's point, and just kind of building on that, we're in a phase in which we get to look at real estate slightly differently. And I think we did 2 years ago, but this is, springboarded us what would have taken probably a 5-6 year change management program to now being in a place where people are really open to different ways of working. So whether that's creating different spaces in our offices to go and collaborate, talk, step out, take calls, have meetings, meet in the lounge for a coffee, that's sort of the piece people have been missing. So creating more of that in our spaces is something that we're really excited about, and something that I get to help create with the teams. But also then the second piece is that technology, and like most businesses, it's how do we connect people, which for us as Facebook, we're on the leading the globe on that front, but we get to use things around our internal products like our Oculus headsets, and how we can engage virtually in that way. We're looking at platforms like our workplace product, which enables us to have meetings like this and engage on the portals and kind of be interactive where possible. And then also through to our booking tools, our home apps, our wayfinders in the offices. These all connect to part of the experience. And I think technology is taking a huge part of that, but also our putting a different lens on experience. And to Charlotte's point, how do we create a cultural fix and like a buzz as quickly as we can, but also was super impactful to be like, I went into the office for 1 day this month, but when I was in there, it was incredible. And the meeting tools aren't going to be the ones that say that. It's going to be the touch and the feel and the experience that we create. And I think we will, to a degree, always keep a desk because it's always our little part of our real estate as an employee. But could we get more flexible and creative in other ways and maybe start to work in different collaborative? Yeah, that's all part of the strategy and discussion for us in the future. And something I think, is super exciting.
And the engagement piece of that is key. I mean, your point about safety is, we're looking at the moment, like, what's an engagement program for our employees to interact with our health and safety team, because they're really, really interested in our HVAC, which they have never, ever been before. So, there's all that sort of thing that we're thinking about. Collaboration. We know now that a lot of our employees are going to be flexible or remote. That means that our predetermined ratios for meeting spaces need to change, but also actually quite a lot of our policy, not our policy, but our guidance and our manners about meeting rooms need to change. So we'll need to do an engagement program about that. We know people are going to want to take more meetings outside, but a lot of our spaces have really good outdoor spaces that we can potentially fit out better to enable more outdoor meetings. So that's something that we're looking at. Just really trying to think through, what are people going to care about that's different, and how do we solve for that? What are people going to do that's different, and how are we going to solve for that? With that strong cultural overlay on top of, how does it enable people to collaborate? How does it enable people to feel connected? How does it enable people to be open, transparent, and to work in an environment that's caring and really takes care of them?
Yeah, no, brilliant. And I think, it's just great that, and I think so many people have seen that acceleration that Casey touched on. And I think also the kind of, it's not uncertainty, but it's just an evolution as people come back to the office as well. I think one other acceleration, and Kevin, you have asked a question, which is all around that kind of, have you seen greater levels of collaboration across the different verticals within the business? So obviously from your perspective, real estate and facilities, but also IT and HR. And I think you can probably answer that, one of you.
Yes. I mean,
Charlotte, go.
I want to give a good example, but the absolute strength of the core team that's been delivering this in EMEA is, it's Casey and the HR lead and the and our EHS lead, have been absolutely key, with a platform underneath that includes security and IT and employment law and a variety of other partners that I've now forgotten, but it's been key, and we have the same setup in all regions globally. It's been absolutely key. We couldn't have done it any other way.
Yeah, no, brilliant. So I think, as you talked about, the COVID has been pretty awful in numerous different ways for the last 18 months. But actually, there are some positives that come out of it, and some of that acceleration we've just talked on is there. So as we then look to that much wider, super positive world that we're all going to see at some point, let's just say that from now on, I couldn't help, and JP, I've come on to your question around sustainability. We couldn't talk as you kind of moved to this thing. I obviously live and breathe sustainability. I'm often called Sustainability Sam, which is a real treat, and a caption even my children call me, which is sweet now. But as you look to the future, I think it's fair to say there's a more empathetic world. I think people are far more aware of the fragility of our position in this world. How is sustainability, the environment, the social, the governance side, all the different aspects, and JP specifically is around net zero, but it's just one aspect. How is that kind of core to the growth, Charlotte? Can you kind of talk at that at a high level?
Yeah, so yes, it's core to the growth. So James has mentioned the goals that we have. And obviously that becomes therefore very key to what we do. So I think there's a couple of things. First, it's important that we understand the data. The data, we can't make the decisions unless we know what we're going to get by making the decision that we make. So I think that's been really key to us. We've got these commitments, we need to hit them. We're looking at it through our design standards, making sure that we are building in as much as possible, as early as possible, so that we know that what we are building now is puts us on the path to achieving the goals that we've set for ourselves. We're also looking at bottoms up, because the reality is people on the ground, teams on the ground, know their building and their space often better than you can do by doing, you know, a top down, doing bottoms up, not top down. I've got it around the wrong way. But you know, the bottoms up piece enables us to really accelerate what we do, because we've achieved what we can with that building by pushing that building within its current constraints to whatever level, you know, we can through local upgrades, through working with the landlords. So that's absolutely key. And then I think we're also thinking about broader than carbon. So we'll talk a bit about biodiversity in a bit. I'm passionate about that, but I think there's key things that we're looking at from a water management, from waste management, through how we just interact with the community around our offices. All of this is key to how we grow. So yeah, carbon is a big bit of it, and that's quite a focus for us, especially right now, because we need to embed the changes to hit those 2030 goals. And now, if we wait too long, it becomes a bigger lift. So the sooner we make the changes, the better.
Yeah, and Casey, from your perspective, sort of from the operational side, and you know, clearly it's very important, and as Charlotte said, it's absolutely core to the growth as you go forward. We've talked about, and I'm not going off piece, Casey, but slightly, but we've talked about the kind of demographics and the culture. I mean, clearly, and we've talked about the importance of that sort of employee experience. Just when you're talking to your clients, and demographic within Facebook, which is young, it's vocal, it's right up to date with all the world's issues. That is do you see that as a kind of big challenge in terms of how you communicate that? Or I say a challenge, but it's also a kind of core part, I guess, of what you do and the team does in terms of being able to articulate what you've achieved in whatever form that is, from changing light bulbs to doing something else with something that somebody doesn't understand because it's very technical. That comms piece must be a key driver for you, isn't it, in the team?
Yeah, to say yes, quite simply. I think, and we've talked about it a million times, we've probably said culture about 1,000 times in this presentation, but in terms of our keep, grow, talent strategy, and part of our accountability and creating an amazing workplace is also the cultural piece. And part of that is around our communities. Generations coming through care about sustainability. It is questions they ask in our interviews. It is, what is your goal as a business? Am I going to buy into this? So for us, it's a critical area, community engagement generally, and I personally bucket that everything from sustainability to D&I to community engagement or social responsibility sort of goals. That all comes in because ultimately is, what are we doing to give back? What are we doing to improve our communities as a whole? And for me, it doesn't matter exactly what bucket we put that into, and it's sometimes a bit easier to measure within those buckets, to Charlotte's point. But we're accountable as part of our culture to make sure that, one, we're doing those things, and then two, to your point, Sam, communicating it so people know all this amazing work that's happening. We do that through our platforms. So we live in a very privileged company where posting out and telling everyone our great stories is a really easy thing to do. But we also hold ourselves accountable to tell clients and to drive these goals that are not just about our physical space, but more around, at the end of the day, we do this incredible work. And some of that work is things like we've been looking at, obviously, our carbon reduction, our sort of electrifying our portfolio where we can have opportunities there, even in our culinary spaces, our supply chain in terms of how we either supply locally versus, pushing things around our region for no reason, things like that. But also I think, we engage with the agents in King's Cross, we engage with our landlords, we engage with our communities. We have this amazing initiative in King's Cross called Cook for Good. And this is something where it's, a soup kitchen. It's got a huge, objective to give back to the homelessness and to those that maybe not be able to afford meals every day, and partnering with them to give back to those people in our communities is something we're super passionate about. And we don't just do it for our employees. We do it because it's just the right thing to do. So I think there's lots there in terms of how we keep that going. I think working from home and keeping the comms up has been a little bit of a struggle in some ways. But again, some of the great initiatives were virtual sessions around how you can do sustainability at home, turn your lights off, LED lights, etc. So we take our agenda and put it into the homes and the workspaces we created during lockdown as well. And again, that goes to that sort of community and employee experience, and whether you're in the office or out the office, sustainability matters, giving back to our community matters, and that's part of our ethos and culture. So there's a few initiatives there. Again, I could go on for hours, but I'll leave the last one to Charlotte because she's very passionate about the honey.
Yeah, so this is definitely from experience one of Charlotte's passions, and rightly so. That I'm not belittling it in any way, but with 4 minutes left, with Charlotte, I've got to, when it comes to biodiversity, you are renowned within Facebook, I think it's fair to say, around your love of biodiversity. So can you give us a little insight into that?
Yeah, I love bees. We all know that I love bees. So I think when I think we were looking at it and we realized how easy it was to do. So where we plant gardens, we now plant bee-friendly plants. And it was as simple as, let's ask our gardeners to plant bee-friendly plants. And now we have bee-friendly gardens. And I think when we looked at London in particular, and worked with the Beekeeping Association in London, we put bees on roofs where we can, and beehives. And so beehives are really, really important. I don't just like the honey, though people give me the honey, which is nice. But the beehives are, enabling our buildings to effectively give back to the local ecosystem. I think it's really, really important. So where we can, we put in beehives. Where we can, we plant bee-friendly planting. And it's like when we looked at putting beehives in London, the Beekeeping Association didn't want us to do it because there aren't enough bee-friendly plants within the area where our offices are located. So we changed that by planting a rooftop garden. So it's something that we're going to continue to push for, pretty much because I think it's wonderful. But it's it's something that's key. I just going back to Christina's question, I think Casey touched on it, but we are encouraging our employees to adopt green initiatives at home, mainly by engagement. We have an engagement program about that. So it's a series of videos with key leaders in our organization. So Nicola Mendelsohn, who I think you might know, she is quite prominent in London, has done a series of changes that I've made to my home to enable it to be greener. And the massive buy-in from our community. And actually, we're thinking about that whole idea of how we make your office, make your home like the office, is something we're thinking of more broadly than just sustainability. So, like, how can we help people understand what the air quality should be at home, et cetera, et cetera. So, bringing facilities to people's homes is also, part of our future strategy.
Amazing. Well, look, I can't thank you enough, both of you, for your time today. It's a brilliant whistle stop, and in certain aspects, really detailed sort of look at Facebook. It's great, and I know the audience loved all of that. Just a couple of wrap-up points before I come back to that particular point. Talking of the wrap-up, 11th of November, just want to highlight that. And there are two amazing keynote speakers at that particular event. One is Clive Woodward, Sir Clive Woodward, the ex-England rugby manager, and Dr. Nicola Millard, head of BT Innovation. It will be a really amazing event. We as a chapter invested a lot of money, so do remember that. You will love it. But Casey and Charlotte, you have been absolute stars. Thank you very much. Audience, I hope you've enjoyed that, and much more to come. Thanks finally to our sponsors, IWG, TOG, Savills and TP Bennett, and for all of you for joining. We will speak very soon, and take care.